Hey, it's Scott Petrak with another episode of the Brown Zone Coverage Podcast. Since we've done one of these, Myles Garrett spoke out against a rebuild and opened the door to a potential exit. Then he got his 100th sack. Dorian Thompson-Robinson got to start at QB and looked as he had previously, and the Browns lost to the Bengals to drop to 3-12. They host the Dolphins on Sunday in the home finale. Here to discuss, as always, is Dave Chudowsky of the WKYC Morning News. Hey, Chud, Merry Christmas.
Scott, Merry Christmas to you. Merry Christmas to everyone listening, and soon to be a Happy New Year. Hope everyone had a great one. Did you have a good Christmas?
It was good. It was good.
Yeah, good. That's great. Better than the Browns did. That's for
Oh,
sure. That was
yes.
pretty ugly in Cincinnati. Scott, I feel like I don't want to go too much on this direction because clearly it's not as bad as some of these teams that we've seen since their return in '99, especially the year when you don't win a game and you win one game. But this was the first time where I feel like all of their losses, they've at least like you're still watching a competitive football team. That just wasn't competitive at all, minus the defense. I will say
All
the
right.
defense played well. I will give the defense credit, but never at any point in that game did I feel like the Browns offense could, do what needed to be done to win a football game like that. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
again, don't want to go too far, but it just felt like all right, the end of the season is here, and again, not using the word give up because I don't think they have, but it's just kind of like all right, they just want to get to the end.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think anytime the offense struggles as much as the offense struggled against Cincinnati, and a lot of that's on the quarterback, and I mentioned DTR kind of looks like he always seems to look. It's a little frenetic, and there's there's glimpses, and he runs, he makes a couple plays with his feet, but there's just not enough consistency, not enough quality throws. Two more interceptions, so now he's 9 interceptions, one touchdown in his career. So when anytime you have those kind of issues at quarterback, and offensively, it just feels like there's not a whole lot of energy because there's no points. You're off the field in a hurry. I mean, they had the one good drive to start, right? Jerome Ford goes for 66 yards. They get to the one, Dante Foreman fumbles. And then they wound up with 19 offensive plays in the first half, which is way below normal. So you just never feel like when you're watching the game, it never feels like anything's happening. There's no juice. So I think that's it. Again, I don't think it's an effort thing. And I think an example of it not being an effort problem is the defense. All of a sudden, they're down 14-0. They give up the 99-yard drive. They give up another touchdown drive. And I'm sitting there in the press box going, this could get ugly. Like this could become low point in a season of lows. And then the defense stops Cincinnati, like for kind of the foreseeable future, give a late field goal, a long field goal to K. York at the end of the first half, and then not another point until whatever, 3 minutes left. Myles Garrett jumps outside, they throw the deep touchdown. But the defense gave the offense a chance to get back in the game. And I think that's a good sign. It shows there's still effort. But the offense just wasn't good enough. We saw one touchdown drive, then we saw another interception into the end zone. I mean, the Browns are terrible on giveaways. And they probably lead the league in giveaways into the other team's end zone. I mean, that's 3 interceptions and a fumble in the last two games, and that's just wiping points off the board. So, yeah, I get exactly what you're saying, Chud, but I think a lot of that is because the quarterback's not good enough and the offense isn't good enough.
Yeah, and the thing is, there were a lot of people that said, "Well, we need to see what DTR can do." You and I kept saying, "I think we've seen what he can do," but people wanted to see what he could do with the
Yeah.
full week of preparation. Well, he got the full week of preparation, and it didn't look any different than to me what we've seen with him. I think we know what we have with this guy. I think we said that in the past, but I
Yeah.
mean, do you agree with that, or do you see any chance that maybe he you know could end up turning into a starting quarterback in the NFL.
No, I completely agree with we know who he
Yeah.
is. Um, I think he's an NFL quarterback. I don't think he's a starting quarterback. I'm not sure he's your number two. I mean, he's a smart guy. He is really athletic, and you see some of the big plays with him running. He had a 14-yarder. He can escape pressure. He also can run into pressure. A lot of spins in the pocket, which I think if you're a coach, like yeah, it's a lot of spinning with a bunch of big bodies around. But I just don't think, yeah, I don't think he's good enough. he can fire the ball. Because I had questions about his arm strength, and then you see some throws like he threw one to Michael Woods, and maybe Woods should catch it. It was a little high, but it was thrown at 100 miles an hour. And there's a lot of that. There's not a lot of touch on his passes, it feels like. I mentioned the turnovers. He's got those. He had a fumble again against Cincinnati, but he recovered it. Uh, he feels, slow to make decisions in the pocket, and then sometimes he hangs on to it too long. Sometimes he leaves too early. And part of that you can explain away as being a young guy, but not enough. And, he said the other day, and I thought good on him for saying it, but he said, no more excuses. Because, he'll get the kind of question like, oh, now you get a second straight week. And he's like, yeah, we could always say that, but no more excuses. He goes, I think everybody sees my potential, but now I have to produce. And we just haven't seen the production necessary. And I just don't think we will. So you can wipe him, in my opinion, off the list of starting candidates for 2025.
Yeah. And he was playing hurt too, right? He got hurt on like the second play of the game.
Yeah, I mean, yes. He said that he had a calf. His calf started bugging him the last couple of days of last week. And then on the second play of the game, he felt it. Goes to the medical tent while they're reviewing the fumble on the goal line, but never misses a play, and then ran well. So I asked him after the game. I was like, hey, or I asked him yesterday. We're taping this Friday morning. I asked him Thursday. I said, did the calf affect you? Because you're running around and you're making plays. And he gave an answer like, if it's not broken or torn off the bone, it's not going to affect me, which, is a pretty good quote. But he played through it. He said he feels good this week. So I don't think he's going to miss a chance to get out there and play.
Did you watching the game, Scott? I just was sitting there thinking, what would be, do you rip the Band-Aid off or do you take it off slowly? Would you, you hear people say, well, I'm not even going to bring up this analogy. It's Christmas time. I had another one, but anyway, I'm not going to go there. But basically I'm saying, would you rather lose as a fan watching DTR and how that would go, or would you rather be entertained for 3 quarters with Jameis and then just have him, throw his third pick in the fourth quarter to lose? What is your more enjoyable way of losing, Scott?
Yeah, to me, it's a no-brainer, Chud. Like if you've established that DTR is not the guy, right? And I get that they're going to start him this week, and they probably start him in the finale, just so you have a bigger sample size. You hate to rush to judgment, but let's use that. Okay, we know who these players are. We know what the future is. I would take Jameis Winston like 12 times a day over watching that. I just think it's more fun. I think if you're a fan and you lose 34-31, it's way better than 12-9 or 6-3 like the Bears Seahawks on Thursday night. Yeah, I mean, because there's always that potential that it turns into something, like it turns into a win. And even if it doesn't, the enjoyment factor. It's like when you're watching a baseball game, right? The Guardians are more fun to watch when they lose 7-6 than if they lose 2-1. Like on a daily basis. On a daily basis, that's more fun. So I would take Jameis Winston every day of the week.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're so right, but at the same, I'm going to answer one of the things that you just said because it made me think of this. Even though the Indians have not given us a World Series, they have given us a lot of memories and a lot of entertainment over our life, in our span since the 90s. Yeah. I used to always feel like, well, if you don't get the championship, you don't get the World Series, or you don't get the Super Bowl, or you don't get the NBA title. Like if you don't get that, it was a waste. But as I'm getting older, I'm starting to think back. All right, so they haven't given us the World Series title, but boy, they've given us a lot of memories. Whereas the Browns, they haven't given us any of that. I mean, it's
not enough.
So at that point, sometimes you have to sit back and think as a fan, you're spending your time. I've been putting on social media. I know it's weird, Scott, for me personally. Obviously you're on the beat. You're there every single minute. When I was in the sports department, I would work from 10 a.m. until 1 a.m. on Sunday. I mean, after those terrible losses at 4 o'clock, I'd have to sit there and think and talk about it for the rest of the day. Now I'm off on Sundays, so I watch the games. But like I literally, Scott, last week, for the Bengals game, I went and got on the treadmill and walked for the whole first half. I'm like, if
Wow.
I'm going to sit here through this pain of the first half, at least I got 3 miles in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I guess my overriding point is, people make jokes like, I'm going to go cut the lawn or rake the leaves
Right.
or
Right.
shovel the driveway. And so, I mean, at some point you want to be entertained, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and you're not getting that with the way it went down on Sunday.
No, I should get one of those pedal things you put under your desk that I see on TV. You know, the QVC ones. I should get that for the press box and get a little workout in
You
while I'm
should.
eating
No,
4 hot dogs.
that's right. That's right. Well, I went way too long on that. I apologize. But now I'll get to the other point though. To be fair, okay, we have to be fair. You always have to look at both sides of the story. You could say, well, if Jameis was playing, it gives them a better chance to win, which is obviously you want to win. It's the goal. But there are some fans or some
Yeah.
people that be like, well, why do you really want the wins now? You'd rather be in a better draft situation. So there could be those people that say, well, yeah, you get to see what DTR gives
Right.
you, plus you're going to help your draft status.
Yeah, I get that from a fan perspective. I've never bought into that, Chud, and I could be wrong. I think you always try to win. I think if you try to create a certain scenario by losing, I think it's terrible for the organization. I think it can bite you in the butt more times than not. We get, I get that it worked with LeBron. Right? I get that tanking has sometimes worked. I hate that way to operate. If you're a fan in that and you want to cheer that way, that's fine. I get it. A higher draft pick is better. But I don't think organizationally you can operate like that. And I sure as hell know that the coaches and players don't operate like that.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. So let's talk about the kicking situation. I mean, is that not just so, you know, it's a Cleveland moment to have Cade York hit?
Oh,
I think
right.
that was his career high, right?
Yeah, it's tied up. Yeah, 59. It was 1 yard longer than the one he kicked in his first game to beat Carolina in Baker Mayfield, and then it tied a Cincinnati franchise record.
Okay, so you can't sit here and argue like the Browns had to do what they did with Cade York. I mean,
Right,
and
right,
they gave him the opportunity. So you can't sit here and say, oh, how could they let Cade York go?
No,
So
no,
that's not what I'm saying here.
right.
But it is incredible that this guy comes back and hits that field goal. And then the guy that you have now and signed to a 3-year deal can't even hit an extra point.
Right, right. And yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's ironic. It's whatever it is. Rubbing salt in the wound. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Cade York is not like he got cut by Washington after week 1. He missed kicks. He missed the field goal earlier in the game. But it's such an easy contrast. 59-yarder, and Dustin Hopkins has one chance and misses the field or the extra point wide right. And then I know he keeps saying that it's not in his head. And who am I to, argue with him? But I talked to him after the game, and I said, are these the last 2 games? Is that a good thing that maybe you get 2 more opportunities to kick? And he's like, oh yeah, because I need to make some kicks and I need all these game reps I can get. He goes, but I'm not going to lie to you. He goes, there's a part of me that wants the season to be over, and that's
Oh,
just where he is. Yeah. He said from a personal and a team standpoint, they're 3-12. He can't make a kick. It's probably better for him to get away, and maybe he won't even kick this week. I mean, they brought in another kicker on the practice squad. I think there's a chance that Stefanski gives Hopkins another Sunday off.
yeah, that was going to be my follow-up question. What's going on there? Who'd they bring in? What is going on?
Yeah, it's Andre Schmidt, and it's spelled, you wouldn't spell Schmidt like that. There's a
That was
Z
my
in
first
there and an
thought.
M in there, a
Yeah.
Y. He used to kick in the UFL with the St. Louis. Chud, I'll give you all the money in my wallet, I got some money in there. If you
Oh,
can tell me what's the St. Louis UFL team's nickname is without looking it up.
the Mustang.
Battlehawks.
Oh, the Battlehawks.
Yeah,
Okay.
so he kicked for the Battlehawks.
Okay. Did you know that before?
Oh, no, I did not.
So if someone offered you money out of their wallet, you
I
wouldn't
would
have
have
gotten
lost.
that either.
Yeah,
All right.
no.
I feel better. The Battlehawks.
Yep.
Okay. Wow. So anything else from the Bengals game before we move on? Because I think the hot topic is Myles Garrett, and I want to get
Yeah.
to that.
No.
But can we close the door on the Bengals game?
Yeah. Real quick. The only thing I would say is part of the DTR issues is he's got to be able to get the ball to Jerry Jeudy, and that's what
I did.
that's what we
Yes.
saw from Jameis Winston was able to do. That's part of why the offense turned around, and he targeted him 3 times in 2 catches for 20 yards. He's got to be better at that.
I did have that in my mental notes to ask you about Jeudy because that's frustrating because that shows you right there. That goes back to our receivers struggling with Deshaun, and
Yep.
then you see what they can do with Jameis Winston, and we saw what the receivers could do with Flacco too. I mean,
Yeah.
so that tells you more. That says a lot to DTR right there.
I agree. And Cincinnati double teamed him, so that's part of it, but it's not all of it. And he said, "Hey, I went back and watched," because he was pretty steadfast after the game. They were double teaming him. I was doing what the defense told. I was doing what the defense allowed. Right? You read the defense, you go to the open receiver, and then he goes, "I watched the film, and he was still getting open." And that's what Jerry Judy's always said is, "I'm still going to get open," and I believe there were opportunities for DTR to get him the ball, and he just didn't do it.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. So I think I had, and we'll talk more about the week to come. But what are we good with DTR to start this week with the injuries? Because Jameis is battling something too, isn't he? Or am I wrong?
That he is, and we don't know yet if he'll be the number 2 or the number 3. He was the number 3 last week.
Yeah, that was kind of a surprise, wasn't it? Or no?
Yeah, I mean, he'd been on the injury report, and then with this right shoulder, and then all of a sudden it was, well, he's questionable, which kind of felt like it came out of nowhere. He's, and he was weird trying to talk to him about it. He's like, I already talked this week. I'm like, I know. Well, you can talk every day you want. And he just said, I got banged up in the game. I'll be fine, kind of thing. Didn't really want to talk. So they went with Bailey Zappi, and he almost got in because we talked about the DTR calf situation, and Zappi's warming up on the field. It's like, oh my gosh, we're going to see him in the first quarter, and then he winds up not playing. But that is significant who your backup quarterback is. We'll see if Winston's a 2 or 3 this week. I was watching him a little bit in practice yesterday, and I saw him make throws, but then I also saw him skip some reps. So it could be Zappi again. And DTR says his calf's fine. He's good to go. I mean, it's going back to what we just talked about. I prefer to see Winston, but I understand if the organization says, hey, let's see another week or 2 of DTR just to make sure we know who this guy is. I understand that. So if that's what they decided to do, or that's what they have decided to do this week, I'm fine with that.
So the Jameis Winston being the 3rd quarterback last week was based on injury.
That's what they're saying.
Okay. Do you buy it? Did you kind of do you buy that totally?
Not totally, but
yeah.
I buy it overall. It just, there's a whole benching that happened, right? And could he be upset about that? Could there be behind the scenes things? Perhaps, but I'll push back at myself because if you watch Hard Knocks on the one that aired Tuesday for the first time, he on the sideline, he looks at Stefanski. So when he threw the 3rd pick against the Chiefs. And Winston asks him, like, are you making a move? And Stefanski's like, let's see how this drive goes. But I'm looking for a spark, and we got to not turn the ball over. And it was like Winston knew it was coming. So I didn't get the impression that he was put off by the fact that he got benched during the game. Now, maybe he had a different opinion that he lost his starting job. I could see that. But he was good in the meeting rooms. He's good on the practice field. There's still energy there. So I'm going to go with his shoulder hurts.
So if you can, I'm going to put you on the spot now. I'm going to give you all the money in my wallet, which really isn't that much. If you get this answer correct, will Bailey Zappi see 1 snap at least in these last 2 games?
Yes. Yes, I feel pretty good about that.
You didn't even hesitate.
No, I've seen this show before, Chud.
That's right. We watched it. Hey, I have to be honest. I have not seen any of the Hard Knocks, and I will get to it eventually. I don't currently have HBO, so I do. Would you say for people who haven't seen it, is it worth watching, or would you say it hasn't been that good? Where are
No,
you at on?
I think it's worth watching. I think, I mean, I'm all Browns all the time. So, and I watch all these Hard Knocks. So it doesn't feel really new to me just because I've seen them, a bunch of these Hard Knocks. But there's always tidbits there. I think you get a really good look at Mike Tomlin. Um, and they go, they go pretty deep. There's a lot of good NFL films, game action. This week was two AFC North games, so you get a ton of Browns Bengals, you get a ton of Steelers Ravens, from a week ago. Uh, so yeah, I would recommend it. I do think it's worth watching.
Do you do do all four teams get the equal amount of coverage?
Well, no, but this week felt pretty even because they were the two AFC North games. I mean, the one week the Ravens were on a bye, so they got about 15 seconds. Um, but then last week, the previous week, they focused on a player from each team and their recovery and how they get ready for games. So Denzel Ward was the Browns guy, so that felt pretty even. Um, like I would expect Browns versus Dolphins not to get a whole lot of run, right? Because Cincinnati's still in the playoff chase. Obviously, Pittsburgh and Baltimore played big games on Christmas Day. So I would think the Browns kind of get the short straw this week,
Yeah,
this
sure.
coming week. Yeah.
All right, let's get to Myles Garrett here to wrap up the pod here, because you got to get out to
I
practice.
do. Yeah.
You got to get to practice. Work needs to be done. But we go back. It was last Friday where all this started, right? 1 week
Mm-hmm.
ago. Is that correct? Okay.
Yep.
So obviously you were there and saw him. You witnessed his interview. You were there. I did not hear it right away, but I heard as I was driving around. I heard in the car on the radio. I can't remember which station it was, but they were talking about it. And boy, I thought this was like a huge deal. Myles Garrett talking about, you know, Deshaun Watson and the future and all this. And then I went and actually listened to what he said, and I didn't feel like it was as big of a deal as the radio is making it out to be. So if you could just bring everyone up to speed who might, I'm sure everyone's heard it by now, but exactly what was said on Friday and what was your interpretation of it?
Yeah. To me, the biggest things were, Chud, that one, he doesn't want to go through rebuild. And two, with him having said that, if they do plan to through a rebuild, he wants out. And or at least he left the door open for the first time that he would consider going somewhere else, which he's never done in his 8 years here. It's always, I want to bring championships to Cleveland.
And that's a big deal. That
Yeah,
part
yeah,
of it, that part of it was no question here.
no doubt. And he put so that was certainly newsworthy. I felt he put pressure on the top of the organization that, hey, we need to contend next year. This can't be a teardown and a let's 3 years from now or 2029 with the dome look to win again. And maybe they say you're wrong, Myles, and that's the plan, and they trade Myles Garrett. Like that is a scenario on the table here. Um, but he said, I'm not going to go through that. And I completely understand it. This is a guy that his rookie year, the team went 0-16. He's been to two playoffs in 8 years, one playoff win. He's turning 29 on Sunday. So he's in his prime, and he's trying to reach all these goals that he has from a team standpoint, from an individual standpoint. He got to 100 sacks. He wants to get 100 more. Well, you're not going to get 100 sacks if you're playing on a bad team. You're just not. You need to be on a good team that with the lead in the fourth quarter and all those things. So I think the 3-12 coming off 11-6 in a playoff appearance, it's hit everybody hard. It's hit the fans hard. It's hit the organization hard. And we know it hit Myles hard, but this was just this was the clearest example of how tough it's been for him that he's talking about, hey, I can't go through this again. And he wants to see the plan. He said he wants to see the plan, and that includes quarterback. But just how are they going to go from where they are right now to contention next year? And to me, it doesn't have to be an elaborate plan. It's, hey, we're going to go sign Kirk Cousins, and draft a left tackle high, and we're going to find another defensive end and a defensive tackle, and we'll sign a receiver. And all of a sudden, you can go, okay, I can see the path to the playoffs, right? Especially if you figure out, if you believe you figure out your quarterback situation. And I'm not saying Kirk Cousins is the answer, but I'm saying he's one of the options out there. And if you give him the options, it's, well, if we draft number 2, we're going to take Cam Ward. And if we don't draft number 2, then it's Russell Wilson or Kirk Cousins or J.J. McCarthy, whoever that guy is, right? You just lay out the plan, and he can see it and hear it and know that it's not. Well, the plan is we trade David Njoku and we trade Denzel Ward, and Myles would be like, hey, right? So I think he did put pressure on the organization. And, Chad, I want to have this discussion another time because I think it's a deep discussion and an important one. But I'm with Myles. I don't think a tear-down rebuild is necessary. And there's people that disagree with me. There's people I respect that disagree with me. I don't think it's necessary. And I think Myles was putting that out there and, like I said, putting the top of the organization on notice.
Well, we've talked about that. I mean,
Yes.
and you're right. We will go deeper into that in the weeks to come. But I think we both have already said that. I mean, we've seen them compete, and we know that there's plenty of pieces that they still need. I don't think they're at a point where, they could just turn it around and get to the Super Bowl, but they definitely could turn it around and have a winning record and make the moves to get further. You're right. I mean, because if you tear it down and it's a complete rebuild, man, I know teams in the NFL bounce back, but it just doesn't happen here in Cleveland.
Well, and I don't think I think it's even different than when they did it in 2016, 2017. And I didn't think they should have done it then. I think the NFL is different now. Quarterbacks become available. You can turn it around quicker. The salary cap is so high, and I know Deshaun Watson's contract is killing their salary cap situation, but it's so high that you have some flexibility, some room to maneuver. I mean, you look at Denver. Denver took the huge cap hit with Russell Wilson, drafts the 5th or 6th quarterback in Bo Nix, and now they're going to the playoffs. And their roster's not better than the Browns, I don't think. Or I think they're comparable, or I would take the Browns roster before that. So if you get the right quarterback, you have the right coach, you can figure it out. And we see it in Washington with Jaden Daniels. I mean, you see it to some degree in Pittsburgh with Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, right? They redid the quarterback, and I know they have a good roster, but it's not an unbelievable roster, and they're losing a bunch of games now. My point is you don't have to say we're going to lose. And I think this organization has gotten to the point where it shouldn't say that. And I don't think the Haslam's had the stomach for it. And that's just me thinking, I know them to some degree, that they're not going to go through that again. But I think Myles just kind of crystallized the argument for a lot of people.
So there's a lot of people that felt that was a shot at Deshaun Watson.
Right.
Was Myles Garrett's comments a shot at Deshaun Watson?
I'm glad you went back to that. Chud, I did not read those comments that way at all. I get where people could jump to that conclusion because he was asked about the quarterback and said, yeah, I want to know what the plan is at quarterback. But the reality is Deshaun Watson's coming off torn Achilles, hasn't played well. Why would anybody think that you just assume that it's going to be Deshaun Watson next year? Like, I mean, maybe if you think to yourself, okay, well, Watson's Watson, and he's got this huge contract, and you should say, well, we have Deshaun coming back. I don't think there's anybody in that building that thinks Deshaun Watson's going to be the starting quarterback next year. So why should Myles Garrett? So I didn't take it as any slight to Myles. He got asked about it after the Bengals game and said, hey, that's not how I meant. We don't know how the rehab's going to go, blah, blah, blah. So I thought that was much ado about nothing.
Well, yeah, I agree with you there. Sorry about that, Scott. I had a little delay there. So I will say this, though. I think he had the follow-up. When was the follow-up with Garrett? Was that after the game?
Yeah, it was so Friday and then Sunday.
Friday and then Sunday. Okay. So will he speak again today then? Usually he talks later in the week, right?
Yeah, it's always Friday.
Yeah, it was Friday. So I will say this, that look with whatever you call that, the headgear he had with the speaker,
Oh,
that he wore after the game? You know what I'm talking about? You saw it. You were there.
yeah, he kind of had the headphones over his like sweatshirt or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I gotta say, I'm glad he brought that back because I know you made that very famous in high school. That was one of your. So it was good to see the Petrak look brought back by Myles Garrett. So I don't
That's
know if you went up and thanked him for that to
nah.
kind
That's funny, Sean.
of. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it's a good looking. Yeah.
that's what we're here for entertainment, Scott. So, all right. Well, I guess what else do you got before we move on to Dolphins? Because I
I
know
got
you got to get rolling.
yeah, I don't think I got anything. I think that's you know what, we should real quick. Joe Batonio, we don't know if
Yes,
he's gonna
yes.
retire. Got asked about it. I've been waiting to ask him about it. Because you know it's a possibility. After the game, he said, I'm not thinking about it. And then it got brought up again Thursday. And he said he's gonna take time after the season. Um, you know, I don't know which way he's going to go. I think, you know, if you're thinking about retiring, then some people think, oh, you already, you know, that's a step toward it. I wouldn't be shocked if he retires. You know, he's dealt with a bunch of injuries, but keeps playing through everything. Obviously, it'd be a huge loss on and off the field. I mean, he's one of the best guys that this organization's ever had. He's one of my all-time favorites.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimate leader, ultimate gamer. Um, so we'll have to see. And maybe, you know, I know he doesn't want to go through rebuild either. So maybe he gets, you know, he meets with Andrew Barry and Andrew Barry lays out the plan and says, hey, we could really use you for one more year. And he
Mm-hmm.
decides to bring it back. You know, I know he's under contract. It's a lot of money he'd be walking away from. So I don't think the decision has been made. But I could certainly see him calling it a career, and it would be an unbelievable career. So whether or not he does that, we don't know. But if he does decide to retire, then this would be his last home game.
Hey, he's your go-to guy. You love
Oh
going to
my
him for
gosh,
interviews.
he's
Yeah,
fantastic. I mean,
yeah, he
not
is.
even that, just to talk to, and he's just a real dude, you know.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm glad you brought him up. I actually did um, want to bring that up to you because and probably that question was brought up to him because of the whole Myles Garrett thing, right? I mean, it just kind of led into it.
Yeah, that was part of it. Yeah,
Yeah, that
for
was
sure.
yeah. Okay. I'm glad you remember to bring that up, Scott. Just like I told you, I was on the treadmill for the first half of the Browns Bengals game. I'm not gonna lie, I'm off this week, so I'm doing a little multitasking here.
Nice.
As so, I apologize for not being on my A game right now.
You're
So
good, buddy. I've got you on a vacation day.
that's right. Yeah, never take a vacation from the
Yeah,
pod.
that's
That
true.
always comes in. All right, what do you think about this week?
You know what? I had, you know, I kind of write down my score before we do this, and I'm going to stick to it, even though we had that whole DTR discussion. And I'm going, how can I pick these guys to win when I just was ripping DTR like that?
Right.
I think this team's got another win in it, and I don't think it's going to be in Baltimore. So I'm going to go Browns 23-21. And I thought they were going to get a defensive touchdown last week, so I'm going to go with the defensive touchdown this week. And they figure out a way. I'm going to go 23-21 Browns.
Okay, I'm not completely surprised by that. So on my family picks, I picked the Browns,
Okay.
just like you just did right there. I had the exact same feeling. I did that 2 days ago. The exact same feeling. I'm like, they're going to get one more win, final home game. You know, the Dolphins are still in the playoff hunt, aren't they?
Yeah, they need a bunch of stuff to go right. And I think
Yeah.
if, depending on how Saturday's games go, they could be
Mhm.
eliminated. But yeah,
Yeah, the Bengals and Dolphins need a lot of help.
yes.
So, okay. But then I started thinking, Scott, I just don't know if I can put my pick behind DTR. I don't know if I mean, nothing I saw last week makes me think that they can put up enough points to win this game. And I look back and I think, why did I think they would score as many as I thought they did last week?
No.
So I was going to go Browns, but I'm switching it to Dolphins, and I'm just going to go 20-10 Dolphins. I'm not sure how we get a field goal. I don't know. But I guess we reserve the right to switch our picks as we always do. So wouldn't be completely shocked if you're right, but I just can't. I can't do it. I just can't.
I get it. I don't feel good about it, but I don't think, you know, I think Miami's flawed, and especially if they're
Mhm.
knocked out of the playoffs, then maybe they just, you know, maybe they lay an egg. Maybe
True.
23-21 is too many. Maybe it's 13 to 12 or something like that. Maybe I'll adjust my score a little bit.
Well, the defensive touchdown certainly would, that definitely helps get to where you're talking.
Yep.
So, well, we'll see what happens.
Cool.
All
Appreciate
right.
it, Chud. As always, buddy. Thank you for taking your time. Go back to having your vacation. I'll go out and watch the football practice for everybody.
Hey, someone's got to do it.
Exactly right.
That's
So I appreciate it, Chud, as always. We'll talk again next week as we prepare for the season finale. And then things will get hopping after that. Who knows what happens after that season finale. But thanks again, Chud. Thanks everybody for listening. As always, this has been another episode of the Zone Coverage Podcast, and you can read all my work at brownzone.com. Thanks.